I'm Becky Mayer, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Transitions. How many transitions do you have in your life? I like to use the metaphor of triathlons. I do triathlons. I'll be in Tunica this Sunday, matter of fact. And first on a triathlon, you swim, then you get to a transition area, then you get on your bicycle, and you bike, and then you transition again, and then you run. And that's a great metaphor for life. How do we deal with change, one thing from another to another? Today we have a very interesting person who's been very public about his transitions, Brad Schmitt. Think of him as a writer, as a recovery expert, as a interesting person that's been very public about what he has to say about his own life, and a TV person too. So welcome, Brad Schmitt. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, yes.
I'd like to hear more about you, actually.
Oh, well, that's another show.
Okay.
You can come, yeah.
Will we have a show where we can switch seats?
Yes, yes.
I want to hear about the triathlon world and how you got into that.
I can tell you about that at another time.
Okay. Then I can be inspired by your story.
Yes, yes. Well, we can. The world is about being inspired.
I need to be inspired by your story.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to find out, you are well known in Nashville as a writer. You were a writer for the Tennessean newspaper, and then not only you did investigative reporting, but then you kind of switched to being the celebrity reporter. And tell us, just in the very beginning, how you, I don't even know where you began, where you're from. Tell us a little bit about that. In high school, what did you want to be, and how that morphed into you got to be a writer with the Tennessean. Tell us about that.
Sure. Well, when I was in 7th grade, I was getting pretty good grades. I never got in trouble.
And this was where?
Outside of Pittsburgh, in a suburb called Monroeville, Pennsylvania. And a bunch of us got called to the assistant principal's office, the assistant principal for discipline. And we were terrified. Oh. Mr. Scroy was 300 pounds, bald and sweaty. Little did I know I would evolve into Mr. Scroy in my adult life. But anyway, and Mr. Scroy, very dramatically in the late 70s, threw open this closet, and there was a bunch of video equipment, like what was around here, only in the 70s, much bigger. Do you remember that, like a VCR, you had to carry it like in a suitcase, and the cameras, even the home cameras, were gigantic? So he then, again, dramatically dropped about 30 pounds of instruction manuals on the table, and he said, I got this $10,000 grant for video equipment. I do not want to read all this. You all are the new video club.
Wow. For
the junior high. And so and then a funny thing happened that we, got to actually use the equipment, and it was really fun. Like you've discovered recently, it's really fun to have your own show and do the video production work and then have it actually appear on the airwaves. And this is like when it was very first cable access, Wayne and Garth, Wayne's World just happening.
Wow.
So more to the point, I think, was that we as the junior high video club would videotape the high school football games under the direction of the adults. So there was 10 camera shoots. It was a big deal in Western Pennsylvania. Wow. And I was on the field, and the cheerleaders would call my name and say, Brad, put me on TV. Well, let me tell you, for a plump, afro-haired, acne, glasses-wearing kid to have the cheerleaders call my name and know my name, and that's when I fell in love with media.
Wow. Because
I found out you could, 1, put stuff on television, and 2, girls knew your name. Doesn't get better than that.
Wow.
So that's how I got the bug. I did TV, video, radio, newspapers, any way I could, I did. And went to Temple University in Philadelphia.
Temple University.
And then went to a couple smaller newspapers, and then came to Nashville in 1990 as a police reporter.
So when you went to Temple University, you were in media, you were studying to be a writer. What was it, your focus? What was it?
The major was radio, TV, and film.
Okay.
RTF on campus. A lot of the football players took it because they thought it was an easier major, and they called it rather than fail. And or their critics called it rather than fail. So yeah, I studied radio, TV, and film, minor in poli-sci, minor in journalism, minor in print journalism.
Minor in journalism. But then you ended up coming to Nashville.
I did, and I came here as a general assignment reporter for about 3 days, and then they made me police reporter. I think back then there was still a little sexism maybe on the beats, and there were some women reporters who had been there longer, but they wanted a guy on the police beat.
Okay.
I don't know. So I did that for 5 years.
Okay, and what was that like? I mean, you were really a TV media person, and they made you a writer?
Yeah, well, I'd done mostly, even in college, I'd done mostly print. The school newspaper I was really involved with, and wrote quite a bit for them. And actually ended, that's going to sound braggadocious, but I remember breaking a few stories that the Philadelphia Inquirer followed, and I thought, I really liked that. I really liked, the hard news, and, there were some issues on campus. And of course, the school newspaper should have been first with those, but I think there was a big issue about whether there's going to be alcohol allowed on campus. And we had gotten a double secret board survey, before the Philadelphia Inquirer did, and we put it on our front page, and I got yelled at by the president's press secretary for printing that. It was a whole.
Wow.
So I love that. Right. I love the drama. I love, getting the story first.
Right.
At any cost.
Yes.
So
yes.
That was all exciting to me.
So the investigative reporting thing, tell us about that.
There was, he just got a bridge named after him, John Sigenthaler.
Yes.
You may know that name.
Yes.
Longtime publisher, editor of the Tennessean, first editor-in-chief of USA Today. Former Freedom rider back in the 60s, aide to Bobby Kennedy, Democratic and journalistic activist. He was the publisher when I was hired, but he was still very hands-on with the newsroom. And in the early 90s, and probably for a long time before that, the police and the gamblers, the numbers runners in Nashville, were really closely associated, and the suspicion was that the police were covering up for what we called them gambling godfathers. Jimmy DeSiri, Sam Simpkins, I can't even remember all their names, but these guys were like, responsible for millions of dollars of numbers running in, like small markets in East Nashville. You would bet.
It still goes on
slips of paper, yeah. And so we started digging into that, and we got a lot of really interesting stories out of that. And I remember John just sitting us down, and wow, he was intense. Like, he was always a step ahead too. He'd be like, "All right, now who does Jimmy, what's his face? Who does he live next to?" We're like, "Oh, well, we get back. Oh, he lives next to a police major." And he goes, "Yes, he does." Like, John already knew that. And who's his daughter dating? I was like, wait a minute. He always knew, but he just needed us to go out and prove it and gather So it was really awesome working for him, and we broke some pretty big stories. I remember the Metro Police Vice Squad tried to do a sting against patrol officers who were taking payoffs from these guys. And they gathered all this evidence, but they screwed it up somehow. I can't remember how that was. But so here was this, they had on tape like 5 or 6 patrol officers who had taken money, cash from these guys to protect them. And they were not only were they not getting fired, but some of them were even getting promoted.
Wow.
So I remember again, this is back in my hard news days, I remember writing a story. It was a front page above the fold that had the pictures of all these cops who had taken money, taken bribes, and the mayor ended up intervening and suspending them all, and I think that they were eventually fired.
Wow. Didn't you do something about like living in a poverty area or something?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
It was at the summer of '94, I want to say. The Tennessean was really into kids. There was such, the rate of kids and violence and kids and homicides, even committing homicides, was just going up and up and up in Nashville in the early 90s. So as part of their effort to look into this, they did a whole thing about kids. And then they wanted to see sort of like where poor kids grew up, what their influences were. So this was the last undercover investigative story the Tennessean did. So another reporter, Susan Thomas, who had years of experience on me. She and I moved in as boyfriend and girlfriend. I was the unemployed factory worker from Pittsburgh. She was the aspiring nail salon.
And were you moving the projects? Or?
We weren't in the projects per se. We were right next. We were 9th and Shelby, next to James Casey Homes.
Oh,
there was a little
Nashville.
apartment there, yeah.
Yes.
And so we were sort of to infiltrate James Casey Homes.
Right.
And look at all the dilaudid sales, the lack of fathers, and all that. We gathered most of our information because Susan would give pedicures and manicures to the women, and I would feed and entertain the kids. And, you know, so in those roles, we could both interview the kids and the moms. And so it was funny because as soon as they were done with their nails and their lunch, we would run in the bathroom with our notebooks and write down everything that they had said, or as best as we could remember it. And we got a 30-day series out of that called Inner City Diary, I think it was called.
Wow. Did you feel in danger doing that?
One time Susan decided, we had parameters from the bosses. Don't go out at night for anything, ever. You know, don't try to buy any drugs or guns or anything illegal yourselves. So one of the last nights we were there, Susan said, after dark, after I was asleep actually, I'm going to buy a gun, Schmitt. And she grabbed a wad of cash and ran out the door.
Oh my.
And so as I'm finding my, you know, shorts and to run out after her, she had already disappeared, and she ended up getting robbed at gunpoint and thrown to the ground by her neck, and was in a brace for quite a while. That was highly dramatic, and that was the end of our little operation. It ended a couple days early because of Susan's stunt.
God.
So that was the and so I really felt bad for Susan, even though she's, you know, the editors felt like she brought that on herself. But when we got down to the hospital, the officers thought that I had assaulted her.
Oh, God.
Because, you know, assaults are almost always domestic.
Right.
And so, and these are guys I knew.
Oh, no.
I'm like, come on, Mike. All the editors are standing right here. They're telling you what happened. We were undercover. Everybody goes, are you sure you didn't? And that was a feeling of powerlessness.
Yes.
But then, yeah, it was less than a year after that, they're like, why don't you be the celebrity news reporter?
How did they go from investigative reporting to celebrity news? How'd that?
There are 100 different stories that I've heard over the years, but I think one that sort of makes sense that I just heard last year from a guy who used to work there, Dave Green. He's like, you were funny. You were funny in the newsroom. And we thought, we need a funny guy who can write.
Okay.
And that was, so yeah, so you had mentioned that I'm in recovery now. So, you know, back then, I mean, I had grown up always feeling less than. My dad died when I was a boy, and I didn't always get positive affirmation from my mother, shall we say. And so, and I'm not blaming anything. I made the unhealthy choices that I did, which were, you know, drugs and alcohol and gambling and girls and smoking and food and
so if you
all these
become
other things.
the one talking to the celebrities,
So
your lifestyle is out there. Hey, you're the man. It's
exactly.
like the high school all over again. Hey, Brad. Yeah.
You know what's up, Becky.
Like the cheerleaders.
That's exactly right. So, and because my very first reaction was, oh, good Lord, no. I'm a serious investigative news reporter. I've lived in the projects. I've uncovered corruption. I've gotten officers fired and prosecuted. Dun, dun, dun. I'm hardcore news guy. And he's like, well, we'll give you billboards and an expense account and your own commercials. And that's where that, you know, so like I said, just that growing, always feeling less than, always seeking things outside myself to make me feel whole. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You know, it's funny because Catherine Darnell was a Society reporter then, called her Cat in the Hat.
I remember.
She wrote about the Swan Ball and all the galas and Belle Meade crowd.
Right.
And she said to me, right before I started, and the column's called Brad About You, She said, before you go from Brad Schmitt to Brad About You, let me tell you a couple of things. Number one, don't be, and I'll say it a little softer, don't be a jerk. She said it a little more colorfully.
Asshole. You can say that.
Boy, I love cable access.
Yeah.
Yeah, she said, don't do that. And she said, do all of your misbehaving out of town.
Oh, was that wise?
So you know, when I fast forward, that indeed I became a self-absorbed jerk, and I got 2 DUIs and got fired from Channel 2. So I saw her just a few weeks ago at Gail Kerr's funeral. Gail Kerr, the longtime Tennessean columnist.
Yes, Gail.
And so Catherine came in for that. And I was like, I didn't listen. She goes, no, you didn't. I told you, don't be a jerk, and don't do any of your misbehaving in town. You didn't listen to me.
Yes.
And I sure didn't.
Yes.
So that's how the transition was made. They thought it was funny. I thought, oh my gosh, here's my chance for the cheerleaders on the sideline to say my name again. For yes, Brad Paisley and Carrie Underwood.
So
and,
you met all the big deal people.
Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson.
So
yeah.
how long did that go on? You're writing for the newspaper, you're the celebrity person, and then TV got in there too. Did you leave the Tennessean and then get into
I did. I went for, I did 12 or 13 years of Brad About You, and then Channel 2.
That long?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I didn't
95
realize.
till about 2007.
Okay, and were you seeing your partying attitude increase as the years went by? You know, and it just became over the top?
Especially when I went to TV, and that's 2007 is when Channel 2 came and waved even more money.
And say, oh, leave the print, and hey, you can be on camera, you know about all this stuff, and you did.
Ish. I didn't, you know, the web was, you know, really active now with news, and I, you know, blog, and they wanted me to shoot my own video and edit my own video, and I hadn't done that since I was in Mr. Scroy's junior high group, and it was all a lot of pressure, and I just felt off, like, because I was the big fish at the Tennessean, right? And now I'm at Channel 2, where most people were like, I don't know if this is a good idea. You know, what is he doing over here? He's a print guy. A lot of people would mention my weight. Including the news director, like, are you going to the gym? And so all these, you know, all of that, like, so now I turn to my solutions even more. So toward the end there, I was working for 60 to 70 hours a week. Wow. Especially at CMA week, because Channel 2 is the ABC affiliate, and ABC had the CMA Awards. So we got like, I did like a total of like 4 hours of red carpet on CMA nights. Wow. So on those weeks, I was working, you know, 90 hours. So were you, while you're interviewing people, or were you under the influence, or? You know, very rarely. Okay. I mean, I'm sure it would have gotten to the, there might have been a few times that I don't think I was ever like drunk. I might have had a couple drinks during a whatever, and then done some interviews. But and I've been pretty candid about all of that, but I didn't really, you know, I didn't show up to work kind of drunk, or, yeah, it was, I would work, then I would go to Sportsman's Grill in Hillsborough Village on the 2nd floor, because they had pool tables and you could smoke up there. Right. So, and that's the only 2 things I did. Okay. I worked too much, and I definitely drank too much. Okay. And then, so you got fired. After a second DUI. Okay. I got 2 DUIs. And that was that like the turning point? It's like, wow, I must have a problem? Oh, you know what's funny about that? I still didn't think I was an addict. And I use the word addict. Alcohol is my drug of choice. But I definitely did some dabbling in some drugs. But when I smoked like a pack a day. You know, when I eat too much. I mean, whatever I did, when I gambled until all my money was gone. I mean, I am through and through an addict. You know, I cannot stop when I start. And I still struggle with that, like I said, with food and with binge TV watching. Netflix is my latest. I've watched 50 episodes of Breaking Bad in about 4 weeks. Wow. That is a ridiculous amount of television. So I'm an addict through and through. So that's why I use that word as opposed to alcoholic. But I didn't think I was an addict when I went to Cumberland Heights. I got so many blessings after I got fired. One was that Music Cares, the Grammy charity branch, actually paid for me to go to rehab, which was beautiful.
Wow, that's nice.
The other blessing was that the prosecutors let me go to rehab at all. I should have done 45 days in jail. That's an automatic 45 days on a second offense. But the prosecutor ended up letting me do DUI 1 again, as long as I did the 3 days in jail and then went to treatment. Huge blessings.
So
Huge.
you went to treatment, and then what happened? You don't have a job.
Right, right. And I'm sitting in treatment going, well, isn't this nice that they have a treatment facility for these people who need it?
Not me.
Right.
Not me.
Isn't it all these, poor people who have, are jabbing heroin in their necks and pulling the bottle out from their bed every morning, and isn't that really nice? I was looking for all the differences and none of the similar. And after about 2 weeks, they had a little. My counselor said, "You don't think you're an addict," and I was like, "Whoa, whoa!" Then I got scared. I'm like, "You're going to put in my chart that I didn't cooperate, and I'm going to have to go to jail." That's what I got scared. I don't want to go to jail again. I was like, no, I've been saying I'm an addict. I've been saying I'm an alcoholic. And he said, but you don't believe it in your heart or your head. And I was like, busted. These guys are pretty good. So they read my, when you go to Cumberland Heights, you write 20 consequences of your drinking and using. And they had a trial for me, and one of the patients read those out loud. And that, I wrote them, so I knew what they said, but hearing it out loud, I just crumbled and sobbed hearing it. It was the shame of hearing it in front of a group,
right?
And it was just the shame of hearing it, from the outside in. And it was, and then they voted on whether I was an addict or not, and they deliberated for 7 seconds. And I'm like, yep, addict. And while that was a funny sort of turn, it really struck me. I also remember, I haven't had that many consequences, I kept saying, and the counselor said, where are you working now? And I was like, oh, you jerk.
I have no job.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that was, so no consequences, huh?
So tell us, all right, so you left Cumberland Heights, you finally realized you're an addict, and then weren't you working at the Y or something?
Yeah. My first sponsor who
and this is an AA? Are we allowed to say that? Or
it's
a 12-step?
In one of the 12-step fellowships, yeah. So my first sponsor is a landscaper. He's not, but he knew the Brad About You media figure. He knew of me before we met at Cumberland Heights, and he's like, and one of the other things that I used outside of myself was attention, right? It's like, let's find a job that's, no ego.
No.
Let's maybe stay out of media, at least in an ego way.
Well, that's good.
So I did a little bit of freelance writing, and God bless Country Weekly for letting me do just a few things for their website every day to get some money coming in. God bless them. Let's do that, and then let's find a regular, maybe even minimum wage job. And I enjoyed going to the gym, and I loved the sound that the gun made at the front desk. Beep. Becky, welcome back. Have fun at Pilates. Beep. Nathan, those abs are looking good, buddy. You're crunching like a crazy man. I love being the idea of being the Walmart greeter for the YMCA downtown. Okay. So I applied and I got it. Okay. I found out later that one of the guys, he doesn't work there anymore, but one of the guys who hired me had 2 DUIs. And that was another God thing, because normally they might be a little bit leery of hiring somebody with 2 misdemeanor convictions. So that was another God thing. And yeah, I started as the membership front door guy at the YMCA downtown.
So what are you doing now? And isn't there recovery.com or something? Tell us about that, because we have a couple more minutes.
Yeah, that transitioned into working for Restore Ministries, which is the YMCA's recovery program.
Okay.
Part-time, and now I work for something called the Nashville Prevention Partnership. That's an anti-drug coalition. I am the pro-recovery guy. I'm not anti-anything.
Recovery guy. And is this a nonprofit?
It is. And so I support meetings, support recovery for people in transition out of jails, out of prisons, out of treatment centers like Cumberland Heights. and I start meetings for them that get people with long-term recovery or medium-term recovery with guys who are just going to come back out into the real world. So that's what I do on the meeting side. And then the other thing that I do is sort of bust stigma. I tell a story, my story. I have other people tell their stories to the Lions Club, the Rotary, the Kiwanis.
Oh, wow.
I sort of just take away some of that stigma away from people in recovery, away from drug addicts and alcoholics, to let people see what we look like, which is real people. And to spread the message, yeah, we can have recovery. I am very blessed and grateful for 4 years clean.
4 years.
And there are people all over, and you've had some experiences with people. You know there are people with 10 years.
Yeah.
20 years, 30 years sober and clean. And so that's the other thing. I want to sort of tell their stories. So the website you're talking about, so I've branded what I do Nashville Recovers.
It's Nashville Recovers?
And that's sort of like my effort and what I'm doing.
Okay.
And the website is nashvillerecovers.org.
NashvilleRecovers.org. Okay, we'll put that up there.
Thank you. And you'll see like people tell their stories on video. People write out their 7, 8 sentence stories of recovery. There's all sorts of resources where if you need help with substance abuse of any kind, there's detox and rehab centers listed. There's sober living. There's the 800 number that you can call 24/7. All those resources are at nashvillerecovers.org.
You know, it's amazing to me, this incredible circle of your life of now because of this path, you are teaching people about recovery. You're using your outgoing self to help people. And are you going to be doing some writing also?
I mean, I do a little bit with, obviously, with the Nashville Recovers blog, but I also do a little bit for Country Weekly, a little bit for the Tennessean, a little bit for Nashville Ledger. There's that side where I don't only write about recovery, and so I get to scratch that itch, but not in a look at me way, not in a columnist way.
Right.
Just in a, how can I serve the newspapers, news outlets organization? But there's a lot of writing with my recovery job too. So.
And I know in today's Tennessean, that's why I called you. There was a great article, and I've been in Al-Anon for years, and I'd recognized this 12-step stuff, and I just thought it was so inspiring. That's why I called you in the first place. And the people that read the Tennessean, whether it's be in the paper or online, it's all good stuff for you. So I want to thank you, Brad Schmitt, for being with us today on Transitions. Your whole life is a transition. It's very inspiring at this point in time, and I know there's more good stuff. Maybe there's a great American novel out there for you too. So thank you very much, Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. I'm Becky Mayer. Thanks.